Welcome to Leading with Curiosity. Command and control leadership is dead. We interview leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive coaches challenging old paradigms and fostering cutting-edge leadership. Here's your host, certified executive coach, Nate Leslie.
Jamie Schwartzman, you're based in LA. You're the chief creative strategist and founder of Flux Branding. For over 30 years, you've been focusing your attention on helping organizations brand and rebrand. You've worked with hundreds of organizations across many industries. You've got a proprietary step process to help people understand who they are now and who they're in the process of becoming as an organization. I'm looking forward to exploring that work at the corporate level with how leaders even see themselves and want to show up in the world for the people that they lead. Welcome to Leading with Curiosity.
Nate, thanks for having me.
I asked you, leading into this, what is the most important question I can ask you? And you said, what role does leadership play in maintaining brand consistency? What do you mean?
Well, look,
What's
I think
important to you
first
about that?
we got to talk about brand and brand consistency. What is brand and what is brand consistency? A lot of people think that it's as simple as I'm going to have a common color scheme. I'm going to use my logo in the same way, and that's going to give me brand consistency. That is a fraction of what's involved in brand consistency. Brand is about communicating meaning. It's about communicating value. And sure, we have a logo, but that logo is really just a signifier for something bigger, for a story, for something that is more meaningful than just purely colors and pictures and words. So when we talk about brand consistency, we're really talking about culture consistency. And culture consistency is driven by leadership. So brand really at its core is a way that leadership can infuse throughout the organization some level of consistency.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Can you give me an example where you worked with a client and there was a real lack of consistency and confusion around that? Maybe it's behavior, maybe it's what they're selling versus their audience. I don't know. Like how do companies get it wrong?
Well, look, my studio is called Flux and Flux Branding. And the reason we're called Flux is typically we're involved in some time of change. There's been some shakeup of some sort. Sometimes maybe it's a loss of market share. Sometimes maybe it's a new product or service coming out. Something is not going as usual. And typically when things are not going as usual, that's where I see the highest risk points, that there is confusion, that things aren't working well. I see it a lot post-acquisition. I've worked with a number of companies that have rolled up a variety of different companies, and equity makes sense. Certainly that these companies could coexist. Maybe they're in aligned marketplaces and from a corporate standpoint, the unity makes a lot of sense. But the people need to be brought together. And so brand in a lot of cases is about internal unity purposes. I do a lot of branding work where actually sales and marketing is not really the primary goal. The primary goal will be getting people on the same page. Look, if I've had my business card, you've had your business card, now equity's pushed us together, we're still carrying our own business cards. We don't feel a sense of unity. So bringing people together under a common umbrella or under a common flag, right? This is a way to start to bring people together and create some sense of unity. And when that unity occurs, it tends to be a more effective organization. I would say it's more spirited. And developing spirit, this branding for me is really, it's a spiritual endeavor, right? To bring the hearts and souls of people together under a common mission and purpose. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's resonating with what we read in doing research for this, is that helping people understand who they are so they can get more clear on where they're headed, which is no different than individual leaders. Like in your life, what are your core values? What is most important to you? So you can focus on what's most important to you and clear the clutter on what's not. So your example there, you've got acquisition, two companies come together, they've grown up independently and now they're meant to be
Or
as
let's say
one.
4 companies come together.
Okay. Yeah.
Even more, typical.
So where would you start? So let's take that example. Typical 4 companies have come together. What next?
Well, there are 4 steps we go through. We'll talk about methodology later. But I would say first it's getting to really know and understand what's going on. In many cases, in those types of situations, I will construct a strategic leadership offsite set of workshops, facilitated workshops, get the people together, get them talking, take them through a set of exercises. And some of them are exercises, like a SWOT or other tools, but I use a number of different methodologies. I really like Grove International. If you've never seen Grove International, they have these great graphic guides that are really pretty, they're disarming and they help facilitate the contribution of ideas. And a lot of times when I do these, I do them with markers, right? I do them with paper, markers on
Nice.
wall. And
Me
there's
too, right
something
on. Yeah.
about this, getting your hands dirty and getting the ink on your fingers that kind of, it changes the temperature of things, because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to unlock what's going on with the people, right? And
Okay.
if we
Yeah.
can get to that point where we know what's going on with the people, then we can get some better insights into really what's happening within the organization and where are the gems. At the end of the day, the brand really, I don't feel like we come in and we do the brand. I think we reveal the brand that's already there. Brand
Yeah.
and this is the same for us as people, right? Nate, for me, I'm Jamie. I am who I am. I may dress differently. Today I'm wearing a sport coat and a hat. Sometimes if you see me out in the water, I'm, sailing, you still know I'm Jamie because I'm the same. I'm that guy. And when we're doing brands for companies, I think it's the analog of that. We're doing exactly the same thing with companies, helping them figure out who they are, what they are at their core so that we can reveal it, allow it to shine through. And when it's authentic, this is why the word authenticity and branding is so important. When it's authentic, it's super easy to sustain. It's no work.
This is so cool. It's so similar to the leadership development facilitation that I do, is understanding, as I just mentioned, who are we and what is most important to us. At that point, it goes into your world for you on the consistency of the messaging and et cetera, and some of the things that people might perceive more as what they think brand is about. And for me, it's about behaviors of how they're going to focus to achieve their goals and their targets and grow their people, et cetera. So it starts from this same foundation. And so I'm really seeing that quite clearly right
Yeah,
now.
we do a lot of the same work. We really do
Yeah.
a lot of the same work.
Yeah.
And in many cases, the product of the work becomes training manuals, becomes things that we'll do,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
immersion exercises.
Mm-hmm.
We just did a big hair care company, 100-year-old brand hair care. Took us about 14 months I don't even know, I would say it's a rebrand. I would just say the brand needed to be clarified, needed to be well documented. And after doing that, then we did a full day session with the sales team. We did another full day session with the product guys. We did another full day session with the influencer and education team, and a full day session with the integrated marketing folks. Because when we develop brand, it's not enough to just deliver a document and say, read
No.
this. You
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
have that experience. You have to actually go through the process and have this impressed on you in a multi-modal fashion, where we'll do some exercises, we hear some music, we'll eat some food, right? All these things contribute to building a strong neural pattern. It's something in our brains that we can then draw upon to create brand consistency. So these are the things that ultimately creates brand consistency. It's about people.
Here's another thing we have in common, because this is adult learning styles. This is adult education. Is just because you've got this great work in a document that people can read, that is only one way. Then they're going to absorb a tiny bit of that, if they even read it to the depth that you and I, who are passionate about our work, hope they will. So they have to live it, breathe it, read it, talk about it, debate it, digest it, get curious about it, teach it to somebody else, right? All these different ways that make it stick. Otherwise, it's just another document in their OneDrive.
Look, we're complex creatures, and our brains are we're processing information at all times. And I think also we're at a time right now where we're facing so many inputs and so many multiple inputs. I mean, I have a lot of projects going on. I have a lot of things that I'm doing right now. And it's difficult for me. I love doing a podcast like this. I'm not distracted. You and I are just talking. But in typical course of my day, I am multitasking. And that multitasking is a difficult thing to do if I'm really trying to learn or I'm really trying to immerse myself in something. And I think for those purposes, this is why we need experiences. And I would say, even to extend this further, I believe that this is like Newtonian physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I do believe that there's an ultimate balancing effect that goes on in the universe. And as we become more digital, and we're facing more and more digital experiences, amazing, awesome digital experiences, our need for offline analog experiences are becoming even more important.
Yeah.
So look at how people are living their lives right now. People are choosing to immerse themselves in much more experiential types of endeavors. We're seeing it across music, across culture, across travel, hospitality. All of these areas have become more rich experientially, I believe, because of what's going on in digital.
Interesting. Are you saying that because of the digital, we're realizing how much we need the experiential, and people are almost rebounding from a submersion in too much digital? Or what are you saying?
Historically, look at the Industrial Revolution. So we have moving away from purely agrarian type of society into industrial mechanization. At that same time, the arts and crafts movement comes up, because as we're seeing this move towards mechanization, people need the opposite. It's day and night. It's good and evil. It's the classic duality of the world. And I think that the digital world has become really amazing, really sophisticated. And that push in one direction is driving an equal push in the other directions, because we need both.
Okay, here's the first free giveaway for the audience is hope. Hope, that we're not going too far in this way. There's a pendulum swinging back. There's an equal and opposite reaction back to the humanity of this. So maybe someone listening to this is walking in the forest right now, and we can say, hey, listener, just press pause and just enjoy your walk in the forest. Jamie and I will be here for the rest of the episode when you get back to the house, right?
Well, I think this is one of the big, the truth is that communications have changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Just during my career, I've watched a tremendous evolution in communications, and it has enabled incredible access to information. I can get all kinds of information. It also has enabled what I call the vocal minority. And there is a very loud vocal minority out there that can seem like a majority because it's so loud.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there is duality out there. And even though we may be observing so much outrage that appears so loud, there's also so much great creativity, artistic expression. Where we're at right now from a cultural standpoint is really, we're epic. And honestly, I feel lucky to be alive, to be witnessing what's occurring right now. I'll just say I'm having a lot of fun.
To get it back to brand, and that identity, it's where our focus goes, our energy flows. So when we can focus on what is good right now, you'll find it, right? When we focus on what is bad, we'll find it as well. And so companies need to focus on what they do best and who they are.
That's what customers want. That's what the customers want.
Yeah.
And brand, now if we start to think about, the pivot of brand from internal to external, brand has become a really important part of self-image and self-realization. As we align our lives with the brands that we trust and that we're loyal to and that we prefer, they are ways actually to reinforce our own self-image of who we could be.
Yeah, never more important in my lifetime anyways, that consumers are need to feel connected to the brand and what the brand stands for in order to feel good about buying that thing that company sells, right?
It's not just about function. It's more than about function, and it's more than about price. It's really about a whole system of meanings that work in unity to what I call radiate, right? So I think that brands, when they are properly crafted, are brilliant. And this is the metaphor that I use a lot for executives to understand brand, because I find that a lot of the executives that I work with don't have good literacy in the area of brand, and that puts them at a disadvantage when they're interacting with their creative teams. So I think having some vocabulary, understanding what brand is at its core, provides leaders a way more improve their value of their organization, the equity within their company.
Let's give some of that away here, Jamie. Some of that literacy, the common terminology that can help leaders be more creative, understand creativity more, and connect more with the creatives in the company. So that literacy, if you're talking to me, business owner, large or small, what is some of that language that I need to know?
Well, I think first it's important to understand that what the brand is trying to do is to create a relationship with the customer. And the brand isn't what we say it is, it's how they perceive it. And the customer is bringing a lot of additional baggage, information, prior experiences, other decisions. They're bringing a lot of other things to the table that we're not in control of. So first, it's recognized that we're in a relationship with the customer.
And perception, you said perception, right? So regardless of what message we're trying to send, we have to understand then the customer is going to perceive us, experience us, my business, in a certain way based on an infinite number of factors that I actually can't control. Is that right?
And since the truth is that every customer is unique, there's billions of possible variables here. This is too many choices for us to wrap our hands around. So we end up having to make certain generalizations and develop what we call personas of the target audience or the target customer that we're really trying to appeal to.
Okay,
At
so
least we
there's a
have
good
that.
word. There's a good word for the listener, right? Personas, because each individual, it's too many. You can't be everything to everyone. So persona, you're kind of maybe lumping some common themes or categories together
Yeah,
that you're
totally.
going to try to portray to.
Well, I think a lot of marketers, what they'll do is they'll develop a persona by using demographics, age range, geography, sex, those kinds of things. I don't believe that demographics are really a good way to develop a customer persona. I think customer personas are more about psychographics as
Okay.
opposed to demographics.
Psychographics. Okay, there's another
Psychographics, like
word. Yeah,
what
yeah.
what are they thinking? What's happening? What are their fears? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are they trying to get to? What are other brands that these types of individuals might resonate with? When we're doing audience identification, we don't do a classic ICP, ideal customer profile. Sure, we'll develop that in some ways, but what we're really trying to find is we're looking for a certain individual who has a predisposition for feeling a certain way about things. And the brand then becomes optimized to communicate to those individuals in a way that they can receive it. So again, like we do when we're doing temperament types or personality types and understanding how people can relate together, it's a very similar thing that we do in branding by developing these customer personas.
Can you give us an example of either a client that you worked with, or if that's inappropriate, just a household name that North Americans, there's a largely North American audience listening, might recognize?
Well, look, I mentioned just worked on a large hair care brand. Very well known. They're called Kenra Professional. And Kenra is a 100-year-old brand. They are a salon brand used by professionals and big following, big following. It's what they wanted to do is they wanted to open up their demographic. They really appeal to an older consumer. And essentially their concern was that their consumers were going to age out. And how could we become appealing to a younger demographic? I hear this a lot, particularly for legacy brands. How do we appeal to a younger demographic?
What's the change or the risk? Their customer base is getting older. They've been around for 100 years. So incomes, things are in flux. If they do nothing, their customers all get old and die. Is their fear.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Okay,
And I
go
think
ahead.
that their perception was that they needed to move to a younger demographic that was like, I don't want my mom's hair care brand. Well, what we found was that there's actually a variety of different demographics that existed that were still very viable. I think their idea of going to a younger demographic is they wanted to go to Gen Z. What we
Okay.
instead did is we said, look, you're strong with the boomer. Let's move down one generation. Let's get strong with millennials. And rather than trying to skip a generation, just move to the
Mm.
adjacent generation. These were slightly older women that were actually, their mom's hair care was, yeah, mom knows best. They're out of the
Okay.
rebellion phase. They're no longer disagreeing with their parents. They're actually identifying with them at that point in time. And so that allowed us to do that. And by taking that approach, we didn't have to make this a rebel brand. In fact, the brand position that we use archetypes. We haven't talked much. I know I'm throwing a big name in here of archetypes, but archetypes are characters that are well understood. We know them because of the stories we've heard. We know them because of the fairy tales that we've been exposed to. Culturally, we know these characters.
So when you're looking at branding, you're looking at archetypes, which, just like the principles personality assessment tools that I use, is a collection of traits, collection of characteristics that can be kind of lumped together or placed in one bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
These are all coming out of psychology.
Yeah.
Carl Jung was responsible for bringing this to codifying it, for making it communicable. And there are 12 archetypes, 12 classic archetypes. The outlaw, the rebel, the magician, the lover, etc.
Okay.
And a quick Google search, you'll find this wheel that explains these 12 archetypes. In this particular case, we went with a ruler archetype. Ruler archetype says, it's a
Wow. Okay.
dangerous world out there, Nate, and that's why we need laws. And I'm here to make you safe. This is what the ruler does. The ruler brings law to the table, protects its citizens from harm, and there's a strength piece associated with the ruler. And that
Wow.
was, so we used that to construct the core message for the brand, which was the power of great hair. Now, I think about this, like, when you have a good hair day, it's a superpower. It is a superpower because when people feel good about themselves, they can be the best they are. They're not worried. They can be themselves. They can live their life better. So, like, we've gone from shampoo now, right, all the way down the rabbit hole into the emotion of living my best life. And that's the power of brand and the power of story.
And the value proposition that you bring, let's just say, for example, if you hadn't gone this route with them, they might take what was sounding to me like a huge leap, thinking they needed to get Gen Z into it. And instead, you've gone after the ruler archetype of one adjacent generation. Those are two very different ads that come out of as a product of this process, right?
Right. And it's not, I would love to say that we came up with the idea. It's not really how it occurs. It occurs through a process of discovery. We
It
did
emerges.
we did a lot of research on this project. We did a consumer study of over 4,000 consumers of what their preferences were, why they were buying the brand, what other brands they were buying. We identified individuals that had bought the brand and left the brand. Why were they leaving the brand? We talked to other folks that, are current users. We talked to all types of individuals, and we're able to develop a lot of data to support our decisions. And so I think data is important. It's not everything. A great painter isn't painting based on data.
Yeah. Yeah. So here is another commonality where, whether I'm as an executive coach working with an executive director of a charity or the head of global cybersecurity of a multi-billion-dollar organization, I don't need to know exactly how to run either those roles. That's not my role as an executive coach. The solutions and the opportunities emerge for that leader through the process. you do the research and you help the client see things. And then suddenly I imagine the path forward emerges based on all the steps you just described you took.
Yeah,
You're
it's for us, it's a 4-step process. Okay, so let's
we
break
said we
down.
would talk about that. We said we
Oh,
would talk about that. So let's do that.
yeah, great. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is best practices for doing branding. I have been doing it so long, I've developed a branded version of this, and I'll break it down from the terms I use to the general terms. For me, it's what I call the idea method. ID, these are 4 steps: ignite, distill, energize, activate. And they stand for the 4 essential phases of doing brand. The first is ignite. This is the discovery phase. For discovery, think of this as market research, but it's not just market research. We do a lot of workshops. We do audits of current materials. We're looking at some data. We're doing a combination of qualitative and quantitative discovery. We're looking at competitors. We're triangulating from a lot of different directions. This can be very brief or it can be extremely in-depth. It really depends on how much time and budget we have available to do. But
You're gathering intel, it seems. You're gathering intel.
Yeah, it's gathering intel. I really think of it as earning the privilege to speak on behalf of the brand. If that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah, I
Because
like
we
that.
can't,
Yeah.
writing is important and ideas are important. And it's not come into so many brands when as soon as I get the project, I think I know it. And I have my idea of
Right.
what we're going to do. And rarely is that the idea that we end up with. Because once I really get to know the company and once I really get to know the people and the situation, it always evolves.
If you do ignite incorrectly, I can imagine clients actually getting defensive. You first need to earn the privilege to speak to
Yes.
to what they're all about.
Yeah, we love to do at the end of Ignite, we do what we call an insights report. And the insights report is, okay, so here's what we see. My hope, and usually is the outcome. When we present the insights report, heads are nodding, going, yep, 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 because we're not really injecting any recommendations at this point in time. This is what we see. And this is an important part of the process because building consensus is an essential element of branding. What's the right brand? It might be the brand that everybody can agree on.
Mm-hmm. So that leads you into Distill, into the D
Yeah,
in
so in
idea.
Distill is brand strategy. So in Ignite, we've done brand discovery. In Distill, we do brand strategy. And brand strategy, it's pretty much poetry. We're writing it out. We're coming up with a big idea. I told you the big idea for the hair care company, the power of great hair. And we'll tell that story. We write almost like a bedtime story of what that means and why that's important. Like when you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and you just, we'll use a lot of metaphor and a lot of creative writing techniques to build an emotional reaction that's going on to these stories. What comes out of that are other things too, like our universal selling principles, the USPs, or maybe the value prop. We talk about core values because ultimately we all have to agree on a set of principles that the brand is going to rest upon. We do tone of voice. We describe services. We write about stuff. And then we also do something we call a creative territory. Creative territory, in the old days, I called them mood boards. But a creative territory is it's a set of images that represent a creative direction for us. And this is kind of what happens in Distill. One other thing we do in Distill a lot is naming. Naming is hard. If you're
Potential renaming, in other words, or
renaming or just naming to begin with, if for anybody who's listening, if you're facing a naming project, just realize it's going to be challenging. And it's challenging to find a name that works. It's also challenging to navigate trademark and intellectual property. And in many cases, we're finding names that we think are really good, but they're encumbered by others. So names have to do a lot. They have to be pronounceable. They have to have a good URL. They have to clear IP encumbrance. They have to be relevant. They have to make sense in many different languages. There's just a lot going on with names. And the truth is names don't have to work in a vacuum. they're within the context of meaning. If we were to talk about developing a great online presence for buying anything, would it be Amazon? Wouldn't you say, Amazon's a river, Jamie? We can't name us after a river. At this point in time, the word Amazon has developed its own meaning, unique and different from that place. So I would say for anybody who is naming, be prepared to compromise. You will probably not be happy with your decision until 6 weeks later. And 6 weeks later, you'll be like, I love the name.
Right
So
on.
it
Okay.
just takes a while on naming.
Yeah.
That's just all happening in Distill. And sometimes this can take a long time.
And then after Distill, E.
Energize. So Energize. Now we've got our strategy. We know our story. We know what we mean. Now we're going to create visual language to communicate it. We are visual beings. Visual communication is highly effective. It's super fast. We can communicate things in a fraction of a second visually that would take us much longer to do verbally or auditorially. So now we're creating visual language. Yeah, it's the logo, but the logo isn't just a logo. It's a signifier. It's a signifier for all the ideas that we've developed in Distill. And then there's other things that go along with this, right? Pictograms, what we call icons, other signs, symbols. A lot of people will say that a brand is a combination of story and symbols. Story and symbols. So really the Energize phase, we're developing the symbols. What's our color palette? Makes a difference. Colors carry a lot of psychological communication.
Yeah.
Typography. What are we doing in typography? They're not just different letter forms. They have different feelings to them. Think about all caps versus all lower. It's a perfect example, right? Now you can take that to the design of typography. There's a lot of subtle psychological communication that's going on in the choices of these things. And that's Energize. The last phase is Activate. And that's, okay, let's take this identity and let's apply it to things. I used to call them campaigns, but I'm not really a campaigns person. Branding, that's the world of marketing. In branding, what we're doing is we're applying the identity to different facets of the identity that communicate. The website. Nate, web has, in my career, web has become everything.
Yeah.
It used to be a novelty. It is not a novelty. We know it's home turf. The single most important facet of the brand is the website, beyond the ideas.
Yeah.
But we do packaging, we do merchandising, we do sales collateral, all the things that you would think of that are in the design bucket, but now they've been informed by the brand strategy and by the brand identity. And that's pretty much where we leave it.
Yeah.
At that point in time, it's ready for the folks in marketing to go and do leads gen. And that's a whole different discipline that is highly analytical. Whereas us at branding, we're sort of a blend of analysis and emotion and creativity, and we're the creative guys, if that makes sense. And I think the marketers, they're the make it happen. They have got to convert.
I've heard a lot of parallels, as I promised we would, to how individual leaders show up. I'm not going to go through them all right now, but I invite the leader listeners to go back and think about this branding, how you as a leader show up, and what work you need to do to get clear on that and who you want to be. Jamie, a couple of questions to kind of bring us to a close here.
Sure.
First, what do you love most about this work?
Well, it's the people. It's people and problem solving. I love the initial phases when we're first starting out. I'm starting a project next week in Baltimore. So I'm going to jump on a plane, go and meet the client, walk the project, they're real estate developers. I do a lot of real estate. And real estate is great because this is where people are going to live, or where people are going to work. And that's an important, I think places are important in people's lives. And so I love doing that work. I would say I just love the work. I love the work when it's working. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And that's an interesting topic for another episode, but you mentioned Baltimore and real estate. In doing my research, you've also worked with the city of Los Angeles, for example. So it's not just companies, it's organizations where people feel a certain way when they're interacting with it, including entire cities. Is that right?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of districts, not really
Okay.
at the city level, more at the
Yeah.
district level.
Okay.
And if you think about how urban areas are developed, they're developed at the city and then at the small district. So I work with smaller districts and I've worked with dozens of them across the country. And each one has their own set of principles. We did some very interesting work in Los Angeles. We've done San Francisco. We've done Las Vegas, Dallas, Memphis, West Palm Beach, all over it. But I love the opportunity to work with places because they all have meaning.
And different, those that you just mentioned all have very different identities and different meaning,
Very
don't
different.
they?
Memphis,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
different than San Francisco.
Final question. Let's get to a personal level. When you're engaging, what is the one thing you need to be most careful about as who you are in order to make the project really successful?
Well, I do need to depersonalize it because I have a very strong set of preferences. And in many cases, I am hired to bring my preferences to the table. But I do need to be careful to check them at the door. It's interesting. It's one of the core values that we have at Flux. At Flux, we like to say that dialogue elevates the work. So we will come in, we will give our candid opinion. Let's talk about it. But at the end of the day, we'll accept all decisions as if they were our own. This is something internally. When we're looking at work and we're deciding what we're going to present, somebody has to make the final call. This is going to work. This isn't going to work. And at the end of the day, that may not be what I chose, may not be what you chose, but it's what the group chose. And when everybody can get behind those decisions as if they are their own, it makes it a lot easier to make decisions and to move forward.
That's actually a parallel there to executive coaching too, which is maybe a final thought as I tie our worlds together. So that when I'm working with a client, if I have to be careful actually in my world about giving my opinion, but if I see something so clearly that I must share and challenge my client on it, for example, I also am trained to be unattached to what they do with my feedback. In other words, it's still up to them to make it useful in their own way.
Exactly, Nate. And the way that I look at it is that I can only understand the dynamics of my clients at the level of which we've interacted. And we get pretty deep and it's pretty intimate, but I can't understand it from the same level of depth that they do. And at the end, they have, and everybody, I feel like this is not just in business, but in life. We all have we have to have the dignity to make our own decisions. And it's something that I can certainly want to get involved. I want to intervene, but it's a lot cleaner when I don't and when people come to their own conclusions.
And then they can live with the final choices that they make.
Exactly.
Right. And yeah. Jamie, this was really insightful. I enjoyed it. I knew I would when I first learned about you. Thanks for being on Leading with Curiosity.
Thanks, Nate. This was a great conversation. I love these kinds of conversations. Let's do it again.
Right on. We will. Okay.
Thanks for listening to Leading with Curiosity. Please share, follow, and rate the show so that other leaders can make positive change in the world. Connect with Nate at nateleslie.ca. And remember, the brain behaves very differently when encouraged to think rather than told to listen.